And then live on Facebook. And let's see, share in a group. And this is Joyfully Farm Free.
Okay, and at a certain point, I will be able to share my screen. There it is at the bottom, right?
Right.
Okay, cool.
First, I'll introduce you,
Okay.
and then I'll switch the host. You'll have to be host, I think, to share your screen.
Okay.
And then you can just give it back to me. Let's see. Oh, yes, it's doing it. Perfect. Connect to event. So it says connect to event, but nothing's going on. So I'll go not now, and we'll do it this way. Of course, now I am actually live in the group, and everybody can see what I'm doing. Everything Elderberry. I spelled it wrong. Okay. Everything Elderberry. Okay, we'll go live and I'll fill it in later. All right.
Sounds good.
That looks good. Now I just need to find you again. It's setting up the meeting. Sarah, can you come in and just give me a thumbs up when you see the video live? Oh, there it is. Okay, we're going. So that's perfect. And hello, everyone. We'll give people a chance to come in. And I'm Chris Dalzell, and I am the blogger behind joybelieffarm.com, and I am the founder of the DIY Herbal Fellowship membership group and the DIY Herb of the Month Club membership group. And with me today is Susannah. Now, how do you say your last name? I forgot to ask you the pronunciation.
Shmurak.
Shmurak. So Susannah Shmurak. Sorry, I should have asked you before we started. Susannah is a freelance writer and a green living enthusiast covering sustainability, gardening, health, and herbal remedies. Her blog, Healthy Green Savvy, focuses on practical shortcuts to eco-friendly living, easy natural remedies, and foraging and gardening tips. Everything Elderberry is her first book. And Susannah and I are going to talk about Everything Elderberry today. Susannah is a longtime environmental activist. She lives with her husband and 2 daughters in Minnesota in a 1910 house. Well, that must be a fun challenge. But now runs almost exclusively on renewable energy. She smothered the last remnants of lawn on her 10th acre corner lot and now grows dozens of fruits, vegetables, herbs in her permaculture garden. So Susannah, today we want to focus. I would love to talk to you about all kinds of things you're doing because I'm very interested. But today we're going to focus on your book, Everything Elderberry, How to Forage, Cultivate, and Cook with this Amazing Natural Remedy. And my first question is, what made you interested in writing a book solely focused on elderberry?
Elderberries have been in my natural remedy toolkit the longest, basically, of any herb at all. And when the publisher proposed a book about just elderberries, I thought that could be interesting, but I had absolutely no idea how interesting until I really dove into the research and found out historically how much it's been used, as well as all kinds of ins and outs of how to use it, and that it's not only the elderberries, but the elderflowers, which I hadn't really done much with before. So the finished product right here was a good year of interviews and unbelievable amounts of research and piles of books. I went through historical recipes and herbals from the 17th century. Wow. It was really quite an adventure. a great experience. I'm also a very long time forager and gardener, and elderberry is a really interesting plant in that regard as well.
Awesome. That sounds really interesting. Your book looks like it has a lot of meat in it. I don't think I imagined that a book just on elderberry would be that thick. So elderberry is found.
I don't think any of us.
Elderberry is found in Canada, where I am, in the US, where you are. I think it's found in Central America too, and all over Europe. Is it found in Asia? Is there an Asian variety of elderberry?
There is an Asian one, and it's used in Chinese medicine as well. Yeah, it's pretty much everywhere at this point, all different subspecies. Australia has its own subspecies as well. So yeah, so I can start telling you.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just need to, let's see, I need to switch host and let you share your screen. Oh, isn't that interesting? Okay, so, oh, there. Some weird box came up that I wasn't expecting. Okay, let's see, more. Okay, I've just made you host, and now you should be able to share your screen.
Oh, great. Okay, excellent. So I know we're working with an audience of people who are maybe somewhat new to herbal remedies, and elder is a great one to start with because it's delicious. It's really easy to convince people to try some because it tastes so good. I want to just start by taking everybody through, oh dear, I have to choose, let's see, desktop. I want to choose my presentation to share. Okay, let's see if this works. Are we seeing my presentation?
We are.
Yes?
It looks good.
Excellent. Okay, great. So I just want to start with some real basics about what elderberry is. And one of the things that Chris already brought up is that it's a shrub found all over the world. So one of the other reasons it's a fantastic remedy to start with is you can get it for free almost anywhere, including in big cities. The foraging in London is notoriously good, apparently. So what elderberry is a shrub that grows widely, and in North America, which do we know, are most of the people on today from North America? In general, is that true of your group?
Yeah, most of them are from the United States.
Okay, so this is important to know. The kind of elderberry that we grow, that grows wild in North America, is called canadensis, Sambucus canadensis, rather than Sambucus nigra. And if you've ever purchased dried elderberries or elderberry syrup, more than 90% of the world's elderberries come out of Europe. They're nigra berries, and they have kind of different properties, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. So in all likelihood, this is what you've seen. You've seen growing by the side of the road, the flowers in particular are very easy to spot, usually at the beginning of summer. It really varies according to your region. So my area, they don't show up until sort of the end of June, but May is a traditional time for elderflowers in a lot of parts of the world. And so knowing that it has these two different possible crops that are both medicinal, the elderflowers are also medicinally useful, can help you locate it. I want to talk a bit about the history of medicinal use because it's really quite astonishing how long people have been turning to this plant for remedies, and not just the flowers and the berries, but also the leaves and the roots as well. And they all have different properties, the bark also. And we're going to go back 2,500 years to Hippocrates, known as the father of medicine, to start tracing its history. So we're really looking at something that's been used for a very long time. This is a 17th century herbal. So the remedies had been passed down from the ancient Greeks and spread throughout the Roman Empire by these hand-copied works. Dioscorides was the one that got passed around the most, full of herbal remedies. Once you had the printing press, every family that could afford a book could essentially have a compendium of herbal remedies of their own. And elder showed up quite a lot because of this ability to use so many different parts of the plant. It became known as the country people's medicine chest. And one of the many comments about it is here from a 17th century book called Silva. If the medicinal properties of the leaves, bark, berries, etc. were thoroughly known, I cannot tell what our countryman could ail for which he might not fetch a remedy from every hedge, either for sickness or for wound. So the leaves were used very commonly for wound healing, as were the flowers. There are numerous remedies that were passed down. So the traditional herbal uses. Elderberry was a long-standing remedy for cough and for colds. It's anti-inflammatory. It was used to promote heart health, eye health, treat arthritis, as a diuretic, laxative, and it had other uses as well, but these were sort of the primary ones. Elderflower was used as a go-to relief for fever, also to treat seasonal allergies. It's also anti-inflammatory. It relieves pain. It's known to be soothing to the throat and to coughs. And then it was also used externally as a skin soother, which it's renowned for. Also as an eye wash and to reduce swelling. Now there's been an awful lot of scientific interest recently. This is one of the reasons the publisher was interested in the book, is that there's been so much interest in how to use this impressive berry for various sorts of health benefits. And when you go into the PubMed database, you'll find hundreds and hundreds of studies that are using different tools to find out how they work. And so they've discovered that elderberries are exceptionally high in something called anthocyanins, which works as an anti-inflammatory and also to combat oxidative stress, which is a state in which the atoms in our body have unstable bonds that can be remedied with these antioxidants. It's one of the reasons we're so encouraged to eat the rainbow. All those different antioxidants can play a role in cutting the damage that can be caused from oxidative stress. So oxidative stress has been linked to development of a lot of chronic diseases that are related to inflammation as well, and the development of cancer. There are a lot of good reasons to look for foods that can do this. One of the main things that it's been studied for is cardiovascular health as a way to promote that, for diabetes and metabolic disorders, and brain health is another one, kind of like the blueberries that got a lot of attention. It's rich in those dark anthocyanins that are thought to be brain protective. It's also showing promise for cancer prevention and treatment as well. But the big place it's gotten the most attention is its effectiveness as an antiviral, because it shortens the duration of colds and flu. And if all this information is going by a little fast for you, I've compiled all of this information into a download that we'll tell you about and give you a link to at the end. So don't worry if you're not taking exact notes. Okay, so the way it seems to work, they've done all these different studies to try to figure out how it's shortening the duration of cold and flu. It seems to work in 3 different ways. It can block the virus's ability to penetrate cells. It can also interfere with viral replication. And last, it stimulates the immune system. So when we take elder, it seems to be working in this multi-action way to help us fight whatever viral infection we've got. And so there've been a limited number of small human trials to test the way elder works in viral infections. And a 2019 meta-study looked at all of them together and found that looking at those, supplementation with elderberry was found to substantially reduce upper respiratory symptoms. More strongly in the case of flu than cold, but seems to reduce symptoms regardless of underlying cause, according to these study authors. Elderflower is also being studied, though not nearly as often as elderberry. It's also rich in antioxidants. It's being looked at as a therapy for Parkinson's, breast cancer, skin cancer, as a control for blood sugar and cholesterol, and also for its antimicrobial properties. Okay, here's the really important part that you'll also find in the download: cautions and contraindications. Some people think if you take a little bit of something, if that's good, then taking a ton of it might be really, really good, but it's always useful to think about some of the issues you want to consider before taking an herb. So if you have an underlying health condition, absolutely discuss with a physician before taking elderberry. There's some reasons for this I'll go over in a second. It's an immune stimulator. So if you have an autoimmune disease or you're taking an immunosuppressant drug or undergoing chemotherapy, it might not be the right thing for you. It also has, because it's a diuretic and a treatment for diabetes, it also has contraindications with those medicines, as well as steroids, and then a medicine called theophylline, which is used for asthma and COPD. It's also worth noting herbs can increase or decrease the absorption of medications, as well as enhance or decrease the activity of those medications. Pretty much any herb you look at, you'll see that there are no studies on pregnant or lactating women. So generally, people are asked to proceed with caution. There's a small number of people who are allergic or highly sensitive to the proteins in elderberries as well. And we'll talk a little bit about how to make sure you're not one of those. So I want to talk briefly. Did you have some questions? I don't know if I got to absolutely everything you were wondering about there.
Darlene is asking whether the slides will be available for them. Are they in your download that you are offering? They're not in the download, but the information on the whole is. Okay.
That is a good question. No, I don't have the presentation available. Okay, so getting your elderberries and elderflowers, you really have three choices. You can buy them, you can forage them, and you can grow them. And I'll tell you some more information about that. It is incredible, the cottage industry that's sprung up in elderberry syrup. You can get it all over the place, including locally. And I would potentially recommend, this is my local elderberry syrup maker. I would recommend looking in, if you're not going to make your own elderberry syrup, though I suppose most people in your group are, to consider a local source because it might be made with fresh berries. And the fresh berries are likely to have preserved more of the medicinal compounds. The main reason for this, I found out, I don't know if you're aware of this, Chris, the dried berries that come from Europe have been frozen first. And one of the experts I talked to said all the juice runs out and they use it for other things. So how much we have in those dried Niagara berries we can get remains something of a question, I think, and I don't think anyone's really studied that. So if I have a choice, I'm gonna make it with the fresh berries. I don't always have that choice, and then you can buy them dried. And there are a lot of them online. They're almost exclusively Niagara. There are a lot of growers in the country now growing the Sambucus canadensis, our local American berries. So you can find those some places. And you can also buy dried elderflowers. But foraging them is so much fun that if you have the possibility, you might want to. And just real quickly, if you haven't foraged before, it's really important to positively identify your plant. I've been out with people who point to purple berries or white flowers and say, is that an elderberry? And the answer is no. And in a group I belong to in Facebook, people are always posting pictures of things that are definitely not elderberry and asking if they've got elderberry to make syrup. So use all the features of the elder. Look at the growth habit, the leaves, the bark, the flowers, the berries. I have a very long post on my website I can leave a link to for anybody curious. I have a bunch of lookalikes just to compare so you can kind of see what the options are. When you're foraging, you should also harvest respectfully. Make sure you have permission, leave plenty for other foragers and wildlife, and only take what you'll use. These are some very basic things about foraging you want to follow. And also remember, if you take the flowers, you're going to reduce the yield of berries. Okay, so a lot of people say, I can forage these so easily, why would I ever want to grow my own? Why bother? And that's not true for everybody, but even if you do have ready foraging, one of the things I learned in all the research I did was that there are some really serious benefits to consider in growing your own. Primary among them is watching for the ripeness. Chris, I think you have some growing on your property.
Yes.
Right, and they ripen at different times and you can check on them, and I have to go a couple miles away to find some, and I get there and they look like this, right? These are not quite ripe berries and the birds have already picked them over, and I'll have to come back the following day and see if some of them are ripe. So you can protect the harvest if it's in your yard. And I think that's a really useful thing, especially if you want a lot of elderberries. So you can still leave some for the birds, but also keep some for yourself. And I found in foraging that a lot of times the birds didn't leave any for me. So I've planted some in my yard now, even though I really don't have the space for exactly that reason. Also, you attract pollinators and all of those beautiful flowers. They're lovely to look at. They smell amazing, but they'll also help your garden. So that's another reason too. The last reason I would suggest is that the wild berries don't necessarily have a lot of flavor. When you harvest things from your local foraging grounds, you get what you get. And cooked down, they were still okay, but in trying to make muffins or pancakes or anything where you'd want a fresh berry that tasted good, it really didn't work. And so having varieties that have been selected for their flavor, I think would be a real advantage to having, to choosing some cultivars like that. There are also some amazing newer cultivars with much greater yields than you're going to find other places. Okay, so now you've got your berries and your flowers. We're going to talk a little bit about safety. So we've already talked about the contraindications. You're definitely being careful with that. We eat the berries and the flowers only. There's one very famous case of poisoning on the internet where someone pressed whole branches of elder into fresh juice, and that is a terrible idea. If you are going to get sick from elder, that's how you're going to do it. So one of the medicinal uses that I didn't talk about is that elder was a very powerful emetic. And so one of the uses we don't really want to do anymore is make ourselves throw up, which will happen if you eat parts of the plant that are high in compounds that can make you sick. And I'll talk a little bit more about those in a minute. Okay, so we're only eating berries and flowers. We have to remember that elder is a food, and we take it in food-like quantities. Just because it's good for you in normal amounts doesn't mean that megadoses are better. And some people are quite sensitive, and you just want to proceed with caution. Start with small doses. When you're starting a new herb for the first time, most herbalists recommend maybe beginning with 1/4 of a dose. Make sure you're not one of those people who is allergic or highly sensitive. Okay, here's the big thing on the internet: cyanogenic glycosides. This is a compound in lots of different plants. It's not just elderberries. It's in apples. It's in almonds. It's in lots of things that are cooked a lot beforehand because of these. So cassava and bamboo shoots are the most famous ones that have been studied. Here's the important information about Native American elderberries. The levels in these plants are actually far lower than in the Niagara berries. So if you are sensitive to the dried berries you've gotten, particularly if you've made the mistake of eating them whole, you may do a lot better with our native plants. And even the leaves and stems have less in our native plants than in the Niagara. However, I did contact a food scientist in England who assured me that the Niagara berries, though their amounts are higher than ours, are still very low and can be eaten safely. There was a great study out of the University of Missouri comparing it to apple juice, which has many times higher concentration than the American elderberry samples they analyzed. So if you're at all concerned about these compounds and you've been fine with apple juice, you probably don't have a lot to worry about. Also remember that heat will break down these compounds. So some people wonder about eating the raw berries and whether or not that's safe. And with a canadensis, I would generally say it is. Now, if your kid, if a small child, body weight of 50 pounds, sat down with a giant pile of raw elderberries, they might get kind of ill. And that is probably not the best idea, but don't panic if you eat a couple raw berries. It's very unlikely to harm you. So there's been a lot of fuss on the internet because the word toxic and poison those are thrown around without a lot of nuance, and something that's poisonous might give you a tummy ache. It might kill you. It depends on how poisonous it is. So if you're worried about elderberries, I would rest easy that these are a food people have been eating for millennia. And don't overdo it. Start small. Prepare it properly, remove the stems. I still remove the stems from our local elderflowers, even though it's kind of laborious. but even a little bit of stem is probably not the end of the world. And there are elderflower fritters eaten very commonly in Germany, where they do actually cook the whole darn thing. So anyhow, any questions you want me to take before I move on to the next thing?
No more questions
that you have that I didn't say.
I just wanted to, I didn't know that about the North American elderberry having a lower amount of cyanide in it. That's really good to know. I did want to, when you were talking about varieties, are there specific varieties that you would recommend for flavor or the size of the berry?
Yeah, so it's not always easy to get all the varieties that I found that you might want. For flavor, one of the growers I talked to singled out York, which is actually very easy to get. And I believe that might be one of the ones that goes to zone 3. Do you know what you're growing?
I'm growing Adams, Bob Gordon, and Magnolia Hill.
Oh, I don't know that last one. Bob Gordon is one of the ones that the growers just turn to again and again and again. Have you found the flavor to be quite good?
We're only in the 3rd year of the plants, so this is our 1st year we're actually getting a significant harvest. So we'll find out. I just harvested them and put them in the freezer to make it easy to knock off the stems.
Excellent. Okay, if you taste test them raw, I'd be really curious to know what you discover.
Okay.
So Ranch is one that I've gotten because it's one of the more compact varieties. It's also known to be particularly productive. And all of these plants, I should say, are considered really easy to grow. Elder can tolerate poor soils. It'll do better with better soils, but it can tolerate poor soils, partial shade. In permaculture, it's one of the things that's paired with walnuts, which can be especially challenging. So it's tolerant of their juglones. They're pretty easy plants to grow. I skipped all the section about the history of its magical powers and lore, but one of the things that elders are also known for is growing direct from cuttings. So if you take a stick of elder and pop it in the ground, they would do that at gravesides, and the plants would just grow from that. It was supposed to be a sign that the departed was happy. Let's see. In terms of adding these to your garden, just be sure that you're choosing something appropriate to your zone. So not everything can handle zone 3. Most of them can handle zone 4. Site it, more sun will mean more berries. So I would site it in as much sun as you can manage. But remember how big some of them can get. So it's really important to not just order elderberry off the internet and hope it's not one of the 12 feet types. In my yard, that would be a really big problem. I've also noticed a lot of people selling plants on, it might be on Etsy, and it just says American elderberry. And I don't think I would choose something that someone randomly cut from the wild, knowing that you can get stuff that has been chosen carefully. So you know what you're getting. If you buy something that says American elderberry, you could wind up with just about anything. All the cultivars that are being sold right now are wild plants that somebody's harvested at some point, but they've watched them and they've taken notice of how well they do and what types of berries they produce and that sort of thing. But if you plant basically any elderberry, you're going to get those medicinal properties. I would have you watch out for some of the ones that are considered ornamental that you can get at nurseries. The black lace is a nigra. So if you're more tending towards the canadensis, you're going to want to skip that. And then there are these other ones that have sort of yellowy leaves. One of them is called, I think, lemony lace. That's actually a red elderberry, and you don't want those. They have also been used as food and medicine, but they have a lot more of the compounds that are going to make you sick. Both the glycosides and also alkaloids. You're just going to get more likely to wind up with a bellyache if you eat the red ones.
So what about the blue ones? Around here, blue grows,
blue ones
grow wild.
Yeah, go ahead. I am so jealous of people who have the blue ones. I have only heard tell how much better the flavor of the blue ones is. Now that's a Western variety. and it'll grow in the Southwest as well, but in much of the country, we just cannot grow it. And Niagara, for that matter, doesn't grow very well in most of the country also. So if you have the blue ones, treasure it. If you can plant one and you live in the right climate, enjoy. I've heard they're fantastic. I hope someday when we're allowed to travel again, I can go try some of the blueberries. So do you use those more for the kind of fresh purposes, or?
I don't personally, but I know people that in close by me that's all they can harvest is the blue ones. Someone was here, one of my members was here yesterday, and she was lamenting that we had black ones and she could only get blue ones. It's interesting how you want the blue because you have the black, and she has the blue but she wants the black. Is there any difference in the medicinal?
Okay, well, the black ones, we don't know. The black ones are the ones who've gotten all the study. And University of Missouri is the epicenter of all this research, and you can't grow blue. So they're not looking at it. So people are pretty confident that you're going to be getting more or less the same thing if they've been used successfully in that region for the same purposes.
Okay.
I think people wind up worrying too much about these kind of things and splitting hairs that a certain type of berry is going to be so much better for them than something else. If you're getting some of this great dark purple liquid in your diet, it's going to be beneficial to you in some way or another. I'd be curious if there were more people reporting in about their success using the blue elderberry, but I'm afraid the science just isn't there yet. So let me talk real quickly about how you might use these things, because people tend to think elderberry syrup and don't realize there's so much more. It's one of the reasons I get so many questions about why there's a book about elderberries. I went through so many cookbooks, historical cookbooks, modern cookbooks, all over the internet. There are really an astounding array of things you can do with elderberry and flower. I'll take you through some of them. If you're a newer herbalist and you're just messing around with elder for the first time, elderberry syrup is a wonderful place to start. And I know you've got your shelf-stable elderberry syrup that you're doing in your challenge. Tincture is also a really nice thing to make. It's so easy. You're doing a fire cider, but you're not doing a tincture, is that right?
That's right. They make, to do the shelf-stable elderberry, they make a tincture first, and then they use
first,
right? They make the syrup, and then they do half and half.
Gotcha. Okay, so you could make extra, you'll be getting some of the tincture that way. Herbalists vary really widely in how they use these products. Some people suggest a drop of tincture a day is one of the ways you can do this. Tinctures are so easy. They sound like a big deal herbal preparation, but they're simply alcohol and your herb of choice, and they're so easy to make. So that's a really useful one. And of course, you can drink any of these in tea. One thing to understand about the berries is that you can't just kind of dunk them in water and get much out of them. So they do need this simmer in order to extract the compounds appropriately. Elderflower tea, however, you make as an infusion. It is so delicious. Highly recommend the fresh, but the dry is also really good. I really like to make oxymels because it's so stable and easy. Again, you're just soaking things in vinegar and honey. I find this tastes an awful lot like a balsamic, and we'll happily just eat it off the spoon. It's really good. One of our favorite things to do with them is gummies. So the line between what's medicinal and what's a treat with elder is very, very blurry. So gummies are just delicious and fun. It's one of the things my family loves. And so are popsicles. This is our Get Well Quick popsicle, which has both elderberry and elderflower. They have slightly different medicinal properties when you're not feeling well, and a popsicle is great on a summer day, but it's also terrific if somebody has a sore throat, and it's a nice way to soothe. Here's another way. These are lollipops. You can put elderberry syrup in your smoothie. I discovered the berries with all their seeds and small amount of flesh not so lovely. if you put them in whole, but if you use a syrup, it's pretty good. Elderflower vinegar was an absolute staple to have in European kitchens for hundreds and hundreds of years. And again, you're just soaking the elder in vinegar. You can keep this for salad dressing, or you can keep it as a medicinal. I like that one a lot. And then the syrup from elderflowers is a really popular add-in to all kinds of drinks. So you can make non-alcoholic soda. It's very popular in cocktails if you want to add a little something special to anything that you like to drink. It's great in sorbet. Ice cream, the famous wedding cake from Harry and Meghan had elderflower syrup in as well. Wow. Muffins, you can actually throw in whole flowers, which I'd never done before. That was pretty fun. And then they make great liqueurs. And then that beautiful red is Chris's choke cherry elderflower mead, which I think is a fantastic combination. And elderberry wine was a long-standing curative. You would take some warm wine when you were feeling under the weather instead of syrup. It was also an arthritis treatment. It was known to help with inflammation so much. The fresh berries can be thrown into anything you would throw a blueberry into. So muffins, pancakes, the baked oatmeal you can make with them is really, really good. I enjoyed that. They're wonderful for jams. And so you're eating all of these delicious foods as treats, but at the same time, you're supporting your body with these fantastic antioxidants and antiviral abilities. The flavors pair really nicely. This is a rhubarb leather with elderberry. It went really well. The syrup flavor goes really nicely with all kinds of fruits, apples, rhubarb, peach was another nice combination, and blueberry. As a matter of fact, this is a blueberry nice cream, the kind of banana ice cream that you can make in a blender. And lastly, there are a number of uses externally. And so we have some recipes for salves you can make with elderflowers, with elder leaves. And that might about cover it. All that information pretty much is covered in my guide, which you can download on my website. And we'll put the link, I guess, under the video when it's done as well. But this is the address where you'll find it. And my book is also available there on my website. And that is the end of my presentation. I would love to take any questions. Let me stop sharing my screen. There we go.
So
yeah, are we back to normal?
We're back to normal. Deborah had a question. She's wondering if Adam's elderberry is a good medicinal elderberry to grow.
Okay, so there isn't, one of the things I learned in doing all this research is that the science that we want is expensive and time consuming. And so to answer that question definitively might cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So nobody's done that. But in essence, all of these blackberries have been studied to as sort of as a whole. And the American berries have very similar compounds to the ones that have been studied more widely in the Nigra berries. So I'm going to give you a likely yes and a mostly don't worry about it, that we don't need to expend a great deal of energy worrying this kind of berry is better than that kind of berry. You know, do we simmer it for 22 minutes or 25? It's following, if you follow some basic principles, you're very likely to get what you need. I'm trying to remember if Adam's is one of the taller ones. That might be a big shrub she's got there.
It is one of the taller ones. I'm growing Adam's. It's about the same size as Bob Gordon. Yeah, it's about, I would say it's at least 9.5 feet in my yard, and that's zone 3. I have another question. If I was a new forager and I went out and I found an elder and I confirmed it was an elder and it was all in flower, how long before I should go back looking for berries?
Good question. You know, one of the things I've noticed hearing from people around the world is that answer might differ somewhat from place to place and year to year, but it's generally about 6 weeks that I would check back. Yeah, it's 6 weeks. So the other thing about an elder, particularly one that doesn't get pruned a lot, is that they ripen at all different times. So we had some that were still flowering at the end of the season when all of the berries had fallen off. So you're going to find some heads ready weeks or even months beforehand. It's a little bit crazy how they grow that way.
And then when you're looking at the umbel, for lack of a better word, of fruit, like in mine, it might be because I'm in zone 3, but there'll be like some very deep purple berries, but there'll be 1 or 2 clumps of green ones on the same one. Do I wait? Because if I wait for those green ones to be purple, the darker ones are going to fall off. So do I harvest the whole thing and then pick out the green ones, or just ignore it?
Well, I would say because the birds are likely to get them before you, I would harvest. The other option, because it's called a cyme, it has all those different sprays that you could potentially cut off. It depends on how many green ones are left. It's probably not worth your trouble to leave that whole head on if it's just, you know, a small percentage. But if you want to, you could go and you could snip off the relevant ones, but that's going to make it much harder to destem them towards the end. Some people have luck actually just banging the berry cluster against a bucket, and so only the right berries wind up in their bucket. And then you don't have to go through the trouble of freezing, which I hear leaves you with a fair amount of stem material. I don't have the freezer space for that.
Right. Okay, we haven't had any other questions come in. Let me just see if there's any more on my list. So people can find your book on your blog. And can you just put up that slide again that has your contact information? We'll make sure that people can write it down. And I will also go back into Facebook when this is finished, and I will add it to the comment section and to the description.
Okay. Let's see if that's working. Okay, there's the guide.
That works.
And the web address.
So healthygreensavvy.com/free ebooks. healthygreensavvy.com/free ebooks. And if you go there, then you can get a copy of the extra guide that Susannah created just for us. I so appreciate, Susannah, that you were willing to come today and talk to the group. Everybody's been working on making the shelf-stable elderberry syrup, and I love that now they know that there's more to elderberries than just making elderberry syrup. That's great. And I learned a lot listening to your talk too. I did not know that our North American elderberries had less cyanide in them than the European ones. And I also didn't know that the berries that I would buy from Mountain Rose Herbs or wherever were actually the European elderberry, and that it was different. That was good to know. I did just now, my daughter came in the room and she actually harvested the blue elderberries and she made syrup, and you asked if the flavor was different. She said the flavor is identical to what I'm making with my dried from Europe elderberries. So I would assume the North American.
No, it's fresh. I'm curious about. Okay,
yeah, and
it's the fresh one that I've been curious about.
Yeah, she harvested fresh.
Yeah.
And actually, maybe she was comparing it to the fresh I made out of the black stuff last year. But she harvested the blue ones fresh, made the juice, and then immediately turned the juice into syrup. So no freezing and no drying.
Right. No, it's the uncooked. It's when they're uncooked. If you made a muffin, maybe you could throw some fresh blue ones and some fresh black ones in, and tell me what you.
She's actually pregnant, so she wasn't going to take a chance with the raw ones. She immediately cooked them into juice. I don't know if they would taste different fresh.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you have anything to report, do let me know. I've been very curious about that. Our local berries are not good enough for muffins.
So let's.
So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming. This is
fun. Did you have another question?
And if anyone has any more questions, I will pass on your contact information and they can ask you directly. All right. You are
terrific.
host, so you actually have to end the live. down at the bottom.
I will do that. Okay. Well,
That's great.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it. And happy fall, and enjoy your elderberries in whatever form you choose. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
So did you end the live? Did you let me?